Have you ever looked at your schedule for the week ahead and just felt this, strange knot in your stomach?
Oh, yeah, like a sense of impending doom over a Tuesday morning meeting.
Exactly. You're staring at what looks like a totally normal string of meetings, dinners, maybe a couple of deadlines.
Right.
But intuitively, it feels like your calendar reads less like a to-do list and more like an espionage thriller.
That is a very accurate way to put it, actually.
I mean, you sense these hidden agendas beneath casual conversations. You're anticipating sudden revelations, and you just feel this underlying pressure, like you were navigating these high-stakes choices where you're just trying to defuse a bomb before the weekend.
It is a profoundly relatable sensation, and honestly, a really human one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we are so conditioned to view our daily routines as mundane, predictable. But underneath the surface of, like, scheduling conflicts and grocery runs, our psychological reality is often a lot closer to a high-stakes
Oh,
drama.
for sure.
We are constantly managing power dynamics, suppressing fears, and, well, negotiating our desires.
Which makes our source material for this deep dive absolutely perfect for you.
It really is.
We are looking at this truly unique stack of texts covering the week of April 27th to May 3rd, 2026.
Such a specific and intense window of time.
Right. And both pieces come from Tarot by Hisi. The first is a highly detailed, nuanced astrological forecast for that specific week.
Which is fascinating on its own.
But the second piece is what's really wild. It's a StoryScope, basically a fictional, full-blown espionage thriller titled The Cipher of Ash and Stone.
I loved this format so much.
Me too. And the genius of it is that the thriller perfectly mirrors the astrological weather of the week.
It creates such a rich framework for analysis.
Yeah, how so?
Well, the astrological forecast provides the blueprint of the psychological forces at play, the overarching cosmic weather, if you will.
Okay, got it.
And then the fiction provides an allegory. It translates those really abstract cosmic concepts into tangible human behavior.
Which makes it so much easier to grasp.
Exactly. And when we analyze both together, this central, unavoidable theme emerges. It's all about the intense friction between the comforting illusions we build to feel safe and the raw, undeniable truth that ultimately sets us free.
So our mission for this deep dive is to decode both of these texts. We want to extract a practical, actionable guide for you to navigate this specific friction.
Because, I mean, whether you are currently managing a tricky dynamic with your partner or maybe contemplating a massive career pivot.
Or just wrestling with your own internal repetitive mental loops.
Right. The mandate of this source material is about dropping the half measures. It is about demanding brutal honesty from yourself.
The forecast lays this out quite explicitly, actually. It notes that the overarching energy of this cycle asks a really pointed question.
Oh, the part about the habits.
Yes. Are your habits, your relationships, and your coping mechanisms actually built to last? Or are they carefully constructed just to distract you from what you really want?
It's a heavy question.
Okay, let's unpack this by looking at how this cycle actually begins. Because the text points out that the first major trigger point is intensely relational.
Tuesday's energy.
Exactly.
Mm.
It's driven by an aspect where Venus trines Pluto. According to the forecast, this combination makes our words magnetic. It says attraction gets, quote, smarter.
I love that phrasing.
It was so good. It's an energy geared toward deep, probing conversations and flirting like an adult.
Which sounds fun, but it's not just lighthearted banter.
No, not at all. It feels like going on a first date where, instead of asking what you do for a living, the person leans across the table and instantly asks what your biggest regret is.
What's fascinating here is understanding the mechanics behind that specific interaction.
Break that down for us.
So Venus represents our values, our aesthetics, and, how we relate to others.
Right, the relationship stuff.
Exactly. Pluto, on the other hand, represents the underworld, the hidden, the taboo, the deeply transformative stuff.
The heavy stuff.
Yeah. Usually we keep Pluto way out of our polite conversations. We don't bring that to a dinner party.
Definite vibe killer.
Right. But when these two planets form a trine, which is this harmonious flow of energy, the hidden truths don't blow up the connection.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they actually serve to deepen it. The forecast explains that being unabashedly honest about our core needs right now can lead to a level of connection that makes us rethink our entire baseline for intimacy.
And this StoryScope brings this abstract concept to life brilliantly.
The Venice scene.
Yes. So early in the narrative, our protagonist, Dr. Lucien Vale, who is a religious symbologist, by the way, and Inspector Elodie Marceau find themselves in Venice.
Classic thriller setup.
Totally. They are tracking clues left by an ancient, vanished esoteric order, and they uncover this hidden chamber concealed behind a Baroque altar.
And inside this chamber are 12 mirrored panels.
But the mirrors are enchanted, right? They don't reflect physical faces.
They reflect psychological realities. Specifically, they reflect betrayals and swallowed truths.
Swallowed truths. That's a great term.
It really is. They show the characters the things they have purposefully kept quiet in order to keep others comfortable or, to maintain a sense of artificial safety.
In one of those mirrors, Lucien sees Elodie's deepest secret.
That she used to be an operative for the Order of Dominion.
Right. The exact zealots who are currently trying to kill them. And when he confronts her, she defends herself by saying she lied to protect him from the truth.
And Lucien's response is just devastating.
He asks, or to control me. That exchange feels like the absolute embodiment of the Venus-Pluto dynamic.
It completely is, and it highlights a crucial psychological insight that is vital to understand. True intimacy requires dangerous honesty.
Because we usually do the opposite, don't we?
Oh, constantly. Let's think about the mechanics of swallowing a truth to, quote, keep the peace. Almost everyone does it.
Sure, you tell yourself you're just being diplomatic.
Right. But pretending not to know something, whether it's noticing a partner's fundamental flaw or ignoring a misalignment in a friendship.
Or just pushing down your own profound unhappiness.
Yes. All of that requires a constant, immense expenditure of psychic energy.
Because you have to actively build and maintain a dam to hold that water back. You are constantly monitoring yourself to make sure the truth doesn't slip out.
Precisely. And that management, that monitoring, is a form of control, just as Lucien points out in the story.
I see what you mean.
When you hide a vital truth from someone, you aren't actually protecting them. You are managing their perception.
Oh, wow. That's a shift.
You are protecting your own illusion of the relationship, ensuring it stays exactly the way you want it to, rather than letting it be what it actually is.
That reframes so many everyday interactions. The sheer exhaustion of playing along.
It's exhausting.
And it perfectly explains the transition into the next major theme of the week. Because once that hidden truth is forced out into the open, well, you can't just ignore it anymore.
Right, the secret is out.
It creates an internal crisis. The revelation demands a practical decision.
Which brings us to the internal friction that follows on Wednesday. The astrological trigger for this is Venus squaring the lunar nodes.
Okay, what does that mean in plain English?
Well, if the nodes represent our karmic trajectory, the pull between our past comforts and our future evolution, a square introduces a sharp angle of tension.
Like a roadblock.
Yeah. The forecast defines this as a necessary course correction regarding our values and attachments.
The text highlights this specific tension point as a battle between logic and intuition. It explicitly warns against overanalyzing the situation and falling back into old habits of perfectionism.
Or paralysis by analysis.
Exactly. And in the thriller, Lucien and Elodie hit this exact wall.
They travel to the abandoned observatory in Prague.
Right, where they face this intricate alchemical clock cipher.
Yeah.
And to unlock it, the instructions demand the use of contradictory principles.
Calculation and surrender.
Yeah, they have to employ calculation, but also surrender. The text says the mechanism only opens when they learn to trust what cannot be mathematically proven.
It is a stunning metaphor for how we often freeze when navigating complex life choices.
How so?
When we are faced with a truth that requires us to change our lives, we immediately want the spreadsheet.
Oh, I totally do that.
We all do. We want a perfectly balanced pros and cons list to give us a definitive, mathematically sound guarantee that everything will be okay before we make a move.
I hear that.
Yeah.
But I have to push back a little here on the source material's phrasing.
Okay, go for it.
Because in the real world, isn't telling someone to just trust your intuition sometimes a really convenient, lazy excuse for ignoring hard facts?
That's a fair point.
Like, if I am about to make a terrible financial decision or stay in a clearly toxic dynamic, I don't want to just surrender to my feelings because my feelings might be incredibly misguided.
That is a very sharp critique, and it's a trap many people fall into. But if we look closely at the forecast's specific wording, it is not advocating for the abandonment of facts.
Okay, then what is it saying?
It is addressing you directly about the mechanics of overthinking. Overthinking is very rarely about finding a solution.
What is it then?
It is almost always a defense mechanism. It's a delay tactic. We use the guise of gathering more data to avoid taking action because we are terrified of the consequences.
Oh, I see.
The text offers a brilliant framework to counter this. It says the required work isn't about forcing a decision, it's about recognizing what's real and what's conditioned.
What's real and what's conditioned. So like separating an actual intuitive knowing from a trauma response or just an anxiety loop.
Exactly. When the text talks about trusting intuition in this context, it means having the courage to dissolve those old mental loops of anxiety that we disguise as logical deliberation.
That makes a lot of sense.
Think of a time when you already knew the answer to a problem. You knew deep down the job wasn't right for you anymore, or a friendship had run its course.
Yeah.
But your conditioned mind stepped in and tried to mathematically prove why you should stay, just so you wouldn't have to take the terrifying leap of acting on that truth.
You want the spreadsheet to give you permission to ignore your gut.
Exactly.
That is incredibly illuminating. So we start the week by forcing the hidden truth out into the open.
Right.
Then we are challenged to stop overthinking that truth and recognize our own delay tactics, which inevitably builds the pressure toward an external breaking point.
The internal friction has to boil over.
And the sources point to a massive culmination at the end of the week. Friday is a heavy day.
The climax of both the astrological timeline and the thriller narrative is intense. The focal point is a full moon in Scorpio.
Full moons are always a big deal, right?
Always. They were moments of culmination, illumination, and release, but Scorpio is the sign of the deep waters.
The really intense stuff.
Yeah, it rules our secrets, power dynamics, emotional debts, and our psychological underworld. The forecast states that this specific lunation acts as a spotlight, exposing exactly what has been buried, avoided, or resented.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because it isn't operating in a vacuum. The astrology here is incredibly layered.
It's a massive cosmic pileup.
The text warns of a T-square involving the Sun and Pluto, which suggests intense power struggles, a battle of wills, and attempts by people or systems to coerce you into submission.
And that's not all.
No. On top of that, Mercury is sitting right next to Chiron, the asteroid known as the Wounded Healer. So all these old, unhealed wounds about our right to take up space or the times we were punished for speaking our truth are going to be triggered.
It is a volatile cocktail. When you combine Pluto's demand for control with Chiron's deep vulnerability, people are likely to speak sharply.
Lashing out.
Right. Reacting from a place of ancient pain rather than present reality. Though we should note the forecast does mention some helpful aspects in this pileup.
Right. Jupiter trines the moon, bringing some hope.
And Venus sextiles Saturn, which offers a chance for mature boundaries amidst the chaos.
Good to know it's not all doom and gloom. But in the StoryScope, this cosmic pileup takes the form of a literal showdown.
On Friday, of course.
Of course. Lucien and Elodie track the final piece of the mystery to a remote mountain monastery. And waiting for them is the leader of the Order of Dominion, Cardinal Severin.
A fantastic villain.
He really is. He has activated a terrifying ancient mechanism known as the Revelation Engine. And Severin is the absolute personification of that Sun-Pluto power struggle.
He is the embodiment of institutional coercion. His core philosophy, which he monologues about in the text, is bone-chilling but philosophically rich.
What does he say?
He states, civilization survives by managed illusion.
Wow.
He fundamentally believes that human beings cannot handle the raw truth. He thinks people actively desire comforting prisons and that it is his duty to provide that control.
It's a dark perspective, but you can see how it applies to our everyday lives.
Oh, completely.
Think about how often we stay in a comforting prison of a job we hate just for the illusion of security.
Or a bad relationship.
Right. So Severin forces Lucien into an impossible choice. Surrender Elodie or the machine will shatter the world's comforting illusions, causing mass chaos.
It is the ultimate test of wills.
But Lucien's response is what truly aligns with the higher path of this astrological weather.
He doesn't fight back.
He doesn't defeat the machine by fighting harder. He doesn't try to outcalculate or overpower Severin. He defeats it by dropping his weapon entirely.
He chooses radical, disarming vulnerability.
Yes, he looks at Elodie, ignores the cardinal completely, and confesses the truth he has buried for the entire narrative. He just says, I never stopped loving you.
And the moment he speaks that unadorned, vulnerable truth, the coercion-based machine literally implodes.
It cannot process a truth that isn't rooted in fear.
If we connect this narrative climax to the bigger picture for you, the listener, the takeaway is profound.
How so?
Any system built on control, whether that is a toxic workplace culture, an emotionally manipulative relationship, or simply the architecture of your own internal anxiety, requires your fear to operate.
It feeds on coercion.
Exactly. It needs you to be terrified of the truth in order to maintain its leverage over you.
As Severin says in the text, fear is simply honesty without decoration.
It is a brilliant line. But Lucien proves it wrong. By dropping the weapon, Lucien disarms his own ego.
He's not trying to win the fight anymore.
Right. He states his truth without demanding a specific outcome or trying to manage Elodie's reaction. He just lets it exist.
And the machine breaks.
And the text shows us that systemic coercion collapses when an individual chooses raw truth over the desire to dominate the outcome.
That's huge.
For you, facing that intense Scorpio full moon energy, this is your mandate. Where in your life do you need to stop fighting for control?
Yeah.
Where do you need to drop the weapon of your own defensiveness and simply state your truth, even if your voice is shaking?
Because the illusion only holds power as long as you agree to participate in it. When you speak the truth, the revelation engine of your own life shatters that false safety.
Beautifully put.
But of course, you can't just have a massive emotional explosion and then leave everything in ruins.
No, you still have to wake up the next morning.
Right. After the machine implodes, Lucien and Elodie survive the collapse and step out into the dawn light surrounding the ruined monastery. Which brings us to the aftermath. How do we rebuild?
The astrology maps perfectly onto this necessary rebuilding phase. Right as the dust settles over the weekend, Mercury, the planet governing our communication and mental processing, slows its pace.
It's changing signs, right?
Yes. It shifts out of fiery Aries and into grounded Taurus, where it will remain until mid-May.
The forecast notes that this planetary shift dramatically alters our mental tempo. It moves us from reaction into response.
Which is very different.
It describes this phase as transitioning from revelation into application. Suddenly, the mind isn't interested in drama anymore.
It wants proof.
Exactly. It wants consistency, a tangible plan, a budget. The forecast explicitly states that the energy now demands fewer traumatic speeches from people with no follow-through.
Which is such a necessary counterbalance to the intensity of the Scorpio full moon.
Why is that?
Well, Scorpio is a water sign. It is probing, emotional, and concerned with the invisible depths. Taurus, however, is an earth sign.
Very practical.
Right. It is stable, pragmatic, and entirely concerned with tangible, physical reality. You need the water to wash away the illusion, but you need the earth to build a new foundation.
In the story, Elodie looks around at the rubble of the monastery and asks Lucien a quiet question. She asks, was it really about saving the world?
And Lucien replies, I think it was about choosing what can last.
So what does this all mean? How do we apply this pragmatic Taurus energy to our own lives after the smoke clears from whatever truth we've had to face?
The text provides incredibly specific guidance for this transition. It advises us to ask what tangible structure supports the emotional solution.
Okay, actionable steps.
The mandate now is do not rush. Do not overcomplicate things with grand visions. Pick the path that is sustainable.
Keep it simple.
There is a line early in the forecast that serves as the core thesis for this entire process. It says, real intelligence arrives right after the illusion falls apart.
I love that concept. The clarity only comes after the collapse.
Exactly. Think about the progression. You navigate the difficult, deeply honest conversation at the start of the week.
Right, the Tuesday Venus-Pluto stuff.
Then you catch yourself trying to overthink your way out of it, and you choose to trust reality instead.
Wednesday's logic versus intuition battle.
Right. Then you face the fear, drop your defenses, and speak the raw truth during the Friday climax.
Boom.
Now, what are you actually going to build in the clear light of day? If your truth was realizing a relationship isn't working, the Taurus energy says, do not just wallow in the emotional realization.
Sit down and figure out the logistics of untangling your living situation.
Exactly. If you had a massive breakthrough about needing to leave your career, Taurus says, wonderful, now update your resume and build a realistic 6-month financial runway for transitioning out.
It is entirely about anchoring your emotional revelation into physical, undeniable reality.
And doing it at a sustainable pace. The text really emphasizes the importance of slowing down our mental activity, which is a relief after such a high-stakes psychological gauntlet.
Honestly, yeah. I need a nap just thinking about it.
It's a lot. Furthermore, the forecast points out that this theme of deep structural transformation isn't just a fleeting weekend mood.
There's more.
Always. It mentions that the effects of Pluto are highly amplified right now because it is preparing to go retrograde on May 6th.
Oh, wow.
This is especially potent for anyone who has fixed signs prominent in their chart, like Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius.
So it's not a quick fix.
No, this indicates that the rebuilding phase is part of a much longer process of important endings and beginnings. It reminds us that structural rebuilding isn't a project you finish on a Sunday afternoon.
It's going to take time.
It is about establishing a completely new standard of operating that you carry forward into the rest of your year. As the forecast beautifully frames it, the goal of this Earth energy is to cultivate flirtation with standards, affection with backbone.
Charm with self-respect. That is the ultimate takeaway.
It really is.
So let's briefly trace the arc of this incredible journey one more time. We begin by surviving the deep, slightly unnerving magnetism of the early week.
Learning that hidden truths actually deepen our connections.
Then we navigate the tricky internal friction between logic and intuition, learning to spot the difference between genuine insight and anxiety disguised as a spreadsheet.
Spot on.
We weather the explosive climax of the Scorpio full moon by refusing to engage in coercion, choosing instead the disarming power of radical vulnerability.
Dropping the weapon.
And finally, we step into the pragmatic, earthy aftermath, slowing down to slowly build a reality that can actually last.
It is undeniably a profound psychological gauntlet, but it is one designed to leave you standing on much more solid, authentic ground than where you started.
However, the source material has one final surprise for us.
Oh, the epilogue.
Yes. The StoryScope doesn't just let Lucien and Elodie ride comfortably off into the sunset. There's a brief epilogue. Weeks after the monastery collapses, Lucien receives a final package with no return address.
Classic.
Inside, he finds a new cipher. The message reads, "The first gate was never the last. Every ending disguises an entrance."
Chills.
And accompanying the cipher is a map pointing to the deserts of Anatolia, marked with 3 intersecting circles labeled power, fear, and desire.
This raises an important question for you to carry forward.
What's that?
We have a profound tendency to view our massive emotional breakthroughs as a final destination.
We think, I finally had the hard conversation, I finally quit the toxic job, I finally saw the truth, I did the work, and now I get to rest in peace forever.
Right. We want the narrative to be over. We want the credits to roll so we can just relax.
We really do.
But the text suggests a reality that is much more expansive and perhaps a bit daunting. The emotional truth you fought so hard to uncover this week is not the finish line.
It's not.
No. It is merely the entry point to an entirely new level of your own consciousness. Notice Lucien's reaction in the story.
When he sees the new map.
Right. He doesn't feel dread or exhaustion. He feels a spark of recognition. He understands that underneath the illusion he just dismantled, there are deeper layers still concealed.
The text mentions older motives and greater disclosures waiting. It really shifts your perspective on the whole process.
It completely reframes how we experience disruption.
It makes you wonder, what if the ruins of your old illusions aren't just a tragic mess that you have to clean up? What if those ruins are actually the foundation for your next great adventure?
The collapse isn't a punishment, it is an invitation.
It truly is. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. As you navigate your own week ahead, as you look at that calendar that might just be an espionage thriller in disguise, we hope you find the courage to question the comforting prisons in your life. Face the mirrors, drop the weapons of control, and see what profound, enduring intelligence arrives when the false safety finally falls apart.